We are very fortunate today to have an outstanding keynote speaker, Ken Frazier. Since 2011, Ken has been the CEO of Merck. When he was named to the position, he was the first Black person to lead a Fortune 500 company. At Merck, Ken has invested heavily in research and development, which has put Merck in an excellent position for the future. During his watch, Merck has developed and released many important and innovative medicines and vaccines, including groundbreaking cancer drugs, the vaccine for HPV, and many others. Over his career, Ken has also been a strong advocate for social justice and economic inclusion. Even as a high-profile CEO, he's not been afraid to speak out for what he believes in, even when it causes controversy. In recognition of his advocacy and his overall principled approach, he's received numerous awards and honors. Ken is also the co-founder and co-chair of 110, a coalition of major corporations committed to making a lasting impact on racial and economic justice. The group is focused on hiring, training, and promoting 1 million Black Americans over the next decade. As you can see, Ken is much more than an incredibly accomplished healthcare leader. He is precisely the kind of forward-thinking person we need in a world that's filled with both daunting challenges and enormous opportunities. We are honored to have him with us today. Please join me in welcoming Ken Frazier.
Congratulations, class of 2021. It is my distinct honor to join your parents, loved ones, and friends, as well as Dean Rothman and the distinguished faculty of the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, to celebrate all of you today. Graduation is one of life's major milestones, just like your first steps, your first day in kindergarten, or most recently, your first day on this august campus. Today, your academic achievements, hard work, and commitment to excellence have qualified you to earn a diploma from one of the top medical schools in the world. And if you ask me, that is a milestone worthy of celebration. Now, you might not know the word milestone has a history, one that I think is especially profound in today's complex world. A couple thousand years ago, the ancient Romans erected stone obelisks along the roads every 1,000 paces, a distance known to them as milli passus, or mile to English speakers. They did this so that travelers could pause, passus, to consider how far they had come, how far they had left to travel, and sometimes which fork in the road they should take to get there. These Roman milestones are a fitting metaphor for times like these when so much is going on. But what we really need to do is pause, to think about what has brought us to this moment in our lives, and decide where we want to go or what we want to do or become or change when we continue our journey. One of the most important milestones in my own life occurred when I was a young lawyer who led the volunteer efforts to argue for James Bo Cochran's release from death row in Alabama. Mr. Cochran, an African-American man, was wrongly convicted and spent nearly 20 years on death row for a crime he didn't commit. The day Mr. Cochran was released from prison in 1997 was a turning point for me. It prompted me to confront my own history. I thought about the hardships my grandfather endured as a sharecropper, and my father's tireless commitment to raising his family after my mother died when I was 12 years old. I reflected on the special advantages I received by being bused to the top schools in Philadelphia, advantages that helped me get into college and Harvard Law School, advantages that were denied to most of my inner city friends and peers. I also confronted the harsh reality of our criminal justice system and how the poor, marginalized, and poorly represented, especially people of color, are too often denied equitable participation in our democratic processes. I realized that I was pursuing something much bigger than a legal career. I was committing myself to a calling, and that calling to stand strong for social justice, economic opportunity, and health equity has provided the moral compass for my decisions and the foundation of my leadership ever since. That sense of calling has never been more important than over the past year. Today, everyone participating in this convocation shares another important milestone. This is the second year that the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic threat has forced many commencement activities at Hopkins to be conducted virtually. I know this wasn't the graduation you had dreamed of. But as the ancient Romans intended, let's pause at this milestone and look back on the past 15 months. We have all borne witness not only to the tragic and ongoing loss of human life around the world, but also to the burden this crisis has placed on each of us and on our families, schools, healthcare providers, communities, and businesses, virtually every part of our society. And we all must acknowledge that the burden is not uniformly distributed. In the words of Richard Horton, editor-in-chief of The Lancet, two categories of diseases are interacting within specific populations: infections with SARS-CoV-2 and an array of non-communicable diseases. These diseases are clustering within social groups according to patterns of inequality deeply embedded in our societies. That interaction is creating the tremendous disparities in COVID-19 hospitalizations and deaths across this country and around the world. Like a powerful magnifying lens, the pandemic is forcing us to examine the underlying injustices in our communities. Unequal access to health services and insurance coverage, long-standing and poorly managed medical conditions, mental health and substance use disorders, low education attainment, poverty and increasing economic disparity, incarceration rates, and structural racism. Never before have these social determinants of health been so conspicuous and felt so intractable. Perhaps even more alarming is that the political determinants of health are playing such a prominent role, affecting who gets the most promising medicines, who can be or is willing to be vaccinated, and who receives the financial and social support necessary to survive until the pandemic is finally contained. These challenges are profound. The solutions are not yet in hand and will not be easy. But even so, as I look ahead at the pandemic from the vantage point of today's milestone, I find myself optimistic. Let me start with the most obvious reason why. For the first time in the history of pandemics, biomedical science is fully on our side. The rapid development of authorized vaccines, antivirals, and immune therapies is nothing short of astonishing, and a tribute to the advanced state of our scientific insights, genomic tools, capabilities, and commitment. But the solution to this pandemic is not just biomedical. New medicines and vaccines alone are only palliative unless they are deployed and actually used by the vulnerable people in our country and around the world who need them most. A former president of my company, George W. Merck, articulated this principle in a speech back in 1950. He said, "We try never to forget that medicine is for the people, it is not for the profits." Now that's a line that gets widely quoted, certainly within Merck. But what many people don't remember about the speech is that George Merck went on to say, how can we bring the best of medicine to each and every person? We cannot rest till the way has been found with our help to bring our finest achievement to everyone. Don't misunderstand me. I know that discovery science is essential, and translating that science into new diagnostics, medicines, and vaccines is how we have helped solve many of the most vexing health challenges. But we must go further. We must transform science into the service of humanity to ensure that we gain its full value. This is the challenge that motivated me and many others to join the biopharmaceutical profession, to go beyond the invention of exciting new medicines and vaccines, to contribute to a world in which these innovations could be more equitably available, to bring the promise of better health to everyone who could benefit and not just those who could afford it. The pursuit of that value is what differentiates a career from a calling. At no time in our history has the quest for equitable access to treatments and vaccines been more important than during the COVID-19 pandemic. And although I wish we could do much more to accelerate the availability and uptake, I believe our voices as champions for global equity in access to pandemic medicines and vaccines are gaining strength. And if we continue our advocacy, we can prevail. That brings me to an even greater reason for optimism. Plagues change history, and you, the newest graduates of Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, are writing the history of this one. In fact, you're already making your impact, and it is impressive. I don't mean to underestimate the challenges you faced during the pandemic, and there have been many. Disruptions in your educational experience, worries about your colleagues, your patients, and your loved ones, and perhaps even losses, loneliness, and the lack of familiar social support networks. The absence of the joys that would normally punctuate your academic life. Simple things like sharing a meal, dancing, or hugging a friend. Those of you in labs have faced your own struggles, how to safely continue your science, find new ways to progress your research, or like our graduate student speaker, Monica Looney, how to reboot priorities, something she did when she volunteered to help establish research facilities and standard operating procedures for working with SARS-CoV-2, even though her own work had focused on tuberculosis. Those moving into clinical training missed out on opportunities to visit your prospective internship program sites or enjoy face-to-face interaction with your potential mentors and colleagues. And your match day lacked the usually robust class celebration. I'm sure the traditional confetti toss was missed by everyone. Despite this reality, we aren't surprised by the depth and breadth of your contributions. After all, you are bright and talented students at one of the world's finest universities, one that has a long tradition of creating the scientific foundation for biomedical breakthroughs, translating that knowledge to the bedside, and then advocating for policies and investments to address the frontline problems faced by people in vulnerable communities. The COVID-19 pandemic has only amplified your creativity and commitment. Some of you, like Monica, retooled your research priorities and helped the Research Coordinating Committee accelerate interdisciplinary basic and clinical research relevant to SARS-CoV-2. Many translated your passion and commitment into volunteer service to help Baltimore cope with the surge in healthcare demand and more recently with vaccination programs. And some students reached beyond the biomedical dimensions of the pandemic to address the needs of incarcerated and underserved people coping with the mental health, social, and financial threats imposed by the pandemic. I had a conversation with Neil Koyawala, our medical student speaker, earlier this month, and I asked him to help me understand how he experienced life as a medical student during the pandemic. I could perhaps summarize his answer as, it was the worst of times, but also the best of times. Yes, there was anxiety, uncertainty, and feelings of disconnection, but there was also the sense of challenge and pride in being part of something so unprecedented and so vitally important. The recognition of the power of unity in working together to tackle the impossible, the inspiring moments of shared humanity, and the humbling responsibility of providing the last empathetic touch a patient dying alone in an isolation ward would ever experience. Neil's hope for the future, that physicians will be better doctors outside of the hospital and better humanists inside the hospital, should be an inspiration for all of us. But Neil's is just one story, and I know each of you has your own story to tell. Your collective talent, innovation, resilience, passion, and courage are the true reasons I am optimistic about our future. For each one of you, there are many milestones yet to come. Some of you will discover new frontiers in the basic sciences, while others are pursuing targets for new medicines and vaccines. Some will evolve as clinicians and healers, and some will sustain the long tradition of Johns Hopkins faculty as exemplary teachers of both the science and the art of medicine. Whatever your path, my hope is that you will continue forward with the energy and spirit you've demonstrated during this pandemic. That as you look ahead from today's milestone, you will not just pursue success in your career, but will also fully commit to your calling. That, in addition to becoming discoverers and inventors, healers and teachers, you will also be advocates for the vulnerable and underserved and activists who help create a more just society that finally achieves health equity and the other promises of our democracy. Because that, in the end, is what a milestone urges us to do. Not just pause and reflect, but to carry onward with newfound vigor, our motivations reaffirmed, our destination drawing ever closer, but only with the constant forward movement of our feet. So I thank you for pausing to reflect with me at this particular milestone in your journey. And I wish you all the best for your road ahead. And once again, congratulations, class of 2021.